Test 1, 2. Hi, Paul. Could we just do an audio check, please?
Yeah, hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
I'll just mute down then for the moment till we actually get underway. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Ready? Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. I'm Chairman of the committee, Dennis Willits, Councillor for Lexton and Braeswood Ward, and chairing the meeting this evening. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please vacate the town hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the high street and then to the car park behind the town hall. Meeting is being held in the Moot Hall in the town hall in Colchester and also being broadcast live over the internet, where it can be watched via the council's YouTube channel, and the recordings will be available to view afterwards. Would speakers please ensure the microphones are used at all times, speaking directly into the microphone. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers. Visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this hall. We may have a short break between 7:30 and 8 p.m. according to where we are in the agenda, subject to progress of the business. Introductions, I've introduced myself. If we could go around the table.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Tate, Prittigate Ward.
Councillor Lewis Barber, substituting for Councillor Kevin Bentley.
Councillor Jackie McLean, substituting for Chris Hayter.
Dan Gascoigne, Chief Operating Officer.
Andrew Weavers, Monitoring Officer.
Hayley McGrath, Corporate Governance Manager.
Sorry about that, Chair. David King, Councillor for Mile End.
Councillor Adam Fox, Old Heath Hythe and Rowhedge.
Thank you. In terms of announcements, there was a rather sad event yesterday when the death was announced of Councillor Nick Cope. He was elected to the council in 1994, representing most recently the Newtown and Christchurch ward, and he had the distinguished honour of being mayor in the civic year 2019 to 20. And from my point of view as a jobbing musician, one of his greatest achievements, of course, was to donate the grand piano, which we have on the stage at the moment. There will, of course, be a whole series of tributes to the late Councillor Cope. But as we are the first committee to meet following his death, might I ask that we stand for 1 minute and remember him and the work that he did for this council. Continuing with the agenda, I think we've dealt with substitutions, and you have those captured in the minutes, Matthew. Good. Urgent items, I've been advised of none. Declarations of interest.
Chair, excuse me, may I just pass on the apologies of Councillor Michelle Burrows. She's been delayed en route. She will join us online if she can. She will certainly dial in. Thank you.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, colleagues. I don't see any. Minutes of the previous meeting. Do you agree to the minutes as shown on the order paper for the meeting on the 18th of January 2022? Thank you. That is agreed. Have your say. We have no members of the public having say. So that brings us on to the first main item on the agenda, the annual equality and safeguarding update report. This is a very important subject to the council, and we have before us this evening a substantial and detailed report on the work that has been going on during the course of the year. Presenting to us this evening, we have Sonia Carr on the system.
Hi, Councillor Willits, it's Lucy Bredman here. I'm going to do the introduction.
And Lucy Bredman.
Yeah, I'm here.
And good. And do we have Yvonne Cook, or is she not here with us this evening?
No, sadly, she can't make it tonight, I'm afraid.
Okay. So if you'd like to go ahead and present the report, in particular, as the chairman of the committee, I noted that many of the things in the report are things that we did last year, we've done this year, and the good works will continue next year. What I'm most interested in is what are the new things that we introduced to improve the standards and quality of equality and safeguarding during this civic year, and if possible, what we identify, areas which we identify where additional work will be required in way of continuous improvement of our processes in the forthcoming year. But with that said, can I hand the floor to you?
Yes, certainly. So hopefully I'll pick up some of those areas with you. So as you've already said, the report aims to remind us all of the importance of safeguarding and equality and diversity and our responsibilities. It provides updates to the national landscape and specifically highlights the things that the council's been focusing on. And the main aim of the report, coming to audit and governance, is to provide the opportunity for the committee to cast a lens over our approach and activities and consider any possible gaps that there might be. There's no simple tick box test to all of this. So this process, along with others, all provides the overarching evidence of our commitment in these areas. And if I just take a moment to remind us all of what our obligations are, they're defined in a number of bits of legislation. The first one's the Children's Act, and that's a safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children. So that's the kind of overarching bit there. With the Care Act, that tells us we have to protect adults with a need for care and support and both of those are in the discharge of our services. So you know that's huge, a huge range of things, but it is within the discharge of the council services that we need to focus. Then our overarching equality objective is to make Colchester an even better place to live and supporting those who need help the most, and we aim to make equality part of our day-to-day business. So they're just a reminder of our overall aims. So the things that we do, there's a lot of information in the report about what we do, and that ranges from set formal processes that are laid out in our policies, such as we do our equality impact assessments, through to some specific activities and projects that are being undertaken in services with partners or indeed with our communities. The report captures a flavour of what we do. It certainly doesn't capture everything, but some key things there that I would highlight that I think are very important are working with our staff and councillors to make them aware of the key areas of what they mean and what they need to do to adhere to both the law and support and protect people. So I guess what I'm saying there is it's around training and awareness. Having dedicated council policies specifically linked to safeguarding, making sure they're up to date. We ensure that staff and counsellors know how to report matters of concern with a formal process in place for that. And it's always important that we keep that up to date, and we're continuing to improve that process. And there is in the report the detail of the numbers and the reports that were made over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. We embed knowledge and expectations across the council, but also have dedicated officers to support and advise on that. So each of the service areas have some key, very knowledgeable officers that will obviously be trained to a higher level that can support that whole embedding process and make sure that they're there to support the rest of the services. We look for best practice and we implement it. And I think there's a whole range of things in the report that are, you know, are beyond maybe what statutory we would be expected to do, or that are listed that we would need to do, that we feel are really, really important. And we're always working hard to try and look at what others are doing and how we can learn from that. We do monitor our progress, and that happens in a number of different ways. We undertake impact assessments. There are a range of audits that we do. We've done some staff surveys, and producing this annual report. I mean, it's a really important public record of the things that we've done over the year. We participate, sadly, in case reviews, special case reviews, serious case reviews, domestic homicide reviews, and we support and engage proactively with the Adults and Children Safeguarding Board and the Community Safety Partnership and Stay Safe. So there are a range of other statutory functions we fulfil. We continually review our policies and procedures, our accessibility to services, and the council's sort of focus on work to reduce inequalities in our communities has been a real feature, especially since COVID. As you said, the report covers just over a year. It's always a bit of a judgment on how much to tell you and how much to put in the report to enable you to get a feel for what we're doing. But generally, the layout of the report is a reminder of this embedded approach and the things that we're doing. We've got a special reflection on COVID and the impact that that's had this year. And then we've provided the usual references to national guidance and policy changes. The executive summary I would especially point people to, because I think that that's a really good summary of some of the things over and above, some of the exceptional things that are going on in some of our service areas that I think demonstrate the commitment across the council. There's nothing obvious that we feel we're not doing, that we should be doing, but we're never complacent. And there is a section on moving forward in the report and some important areas here where we're progressing. And a couple of those that I would just highlight. I think workforce equality and diversity and inclusion is having some real focus at the moment. And we've had an independent external audit done. And we're working to look at our people strategy and approach, review our HR policies, looking at recruitment, learning and development, the profile of our workforce by protected characteristics, and how far equality and diversity is embedded in the council from senior management right through the organisation. That work's still ongoing, and the outcomes will feed into our future people strategy and approaches. And I've no doubt that there'll be areas that we can work on in future to improve our approach there. And another key area I'd just pull out is in line with our Communities Can approach, which we launched in partnership with One Colchester last year, where we work with partners to better understand the impacts of COVID on community groups and other assets that they really held dear and which just stopped overnight. And through One Colchester and Community 360, there's been the development of some real-time asset mapping work within local communities to help identify where people can go and get support and advice and help, along with local clubs that they could join for additional company skills development, increase in physical activity, and a whole range of things aimed at improving health and well-being, tackling poverty and inequality. So there's some key areas of work that I think are really important for the council overall at the moment. So I hope that gives you a summary, but very happy to take questions, comments, or expand on any of that anyone would like.
Is there anything additional which Sonia Carr wishes to bring to our attention?
Evening, Chair. Thank you. just to reiterate really what Lucy has just summarised, I think it's safeguarding is never something that we drop the ball on. It's something that we're always trying to improve. Lucy mentioned training. Obviously, we put into place May last year a new comprehensive training plan for safeguarding. So we've tried to look at what the staff are telling us they need, what the audits are telling us we need, and try and put that into a comprehensive plan, different levels of training for different roles within the organisation, monitoring those, constantly asking staff, senior managers what training they require to go forward. More intensive training for our designated safeguarding officers that Lucy mentioned as well. So trying to ensure that we have a really consistent approach throughout the council. Hoping to work more with members, so maybe to give some more specialised training in some of those member development sessions. So that's something that we've really tried to concentrate on over the last year, and it will be something that we continue to concentrate on over the next 12 months. I think as well, something positive for us has been closer working with the adults and children's safeguarding boards. So again, linking into any advice, awareness we need to there, best practice, working with many other local authorities as well. So again, as Lucy mentioned, taking some of their best practice, but also sharing. They often come to us for advice on how we're delivering our safeguarding. So that's all I'd like to add. Thank you.
Thank you for those reports. They certainly help us understand many of the issues that are presented in the report. If I can start off with a very general question. Equality and safeguarding are wound into the fabric of what the council does and the way we do it, and that is rightly so. If I'm asked the question as chairman of governance committee, what are we doing on equality and safeguarding? I could hand over the report that's attached to item 7, which would cover the issue factually, but it's not an easy read to me. It certainly covers the area. It covers the area exceptionally well and says what we're doing, why we're doing, which projects are carrying forward, and so on. But we don't have it in what I might describe as pamphlet form. You know, this is what Colchester Borough Council believes is right for equality and safeguarding throughout our operations. I'm not sure whether it's tried to try and equate it to what happens on, say, museum service, where they have a glossy brochure of what the museum service does, or sports and leisure, where again they have a lot of information perhaps written by an advertising copywriter explaining what it is in very easy terms and in a logical sequence of what work is being done, what services are being offered. I've always felt that equality and safeguarding falls short on that, because we know what is being done, but it isn't explained in a way which is easily understandable to those who are not actually embedded in the process. And as members, as has been said, we receive a fair amount of training on these issues. But to those who are not trained in this area, I find it quite difficult to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and in particular explaining the details of what we do as a logical story to ensure that we meet government requirements, regulations, and we do what as human beings we see as appropriate to ensure that we work together in a harmonious and friendly manner. So is there scope, probably question to you, Lucy, is there scope to produce a description of all this work in a more user-friendly manner?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, the report, like I said, I think it's a bit of a judgment for us. We're trying to give you as much information as we possibly can to help you as a committee kind of assess overall. It's not tick box, it's not black and white. The duties that we have are very, very broad. So I guess because of that, we try to give you maybe too much, but certainly we can break it down into some really key areas. The website does that a little bit. You know, if you go and look at safeguarding on the website or equality and diversity, I think it summarizes it quite nicely on there. But essentially it's about awareness, it's about training, it's about making sure our staff know what to do. It's about, you know, and we can do that. And maybe next year, one of the approaches we can take is to break the two, you know, into two sections and do you almost a separate report on safeguarding and a separate one on equality and diversity. And we'll definitely go away and have a think about how to simplify it, because it, you know, there are some key things that we really have to focus on, and then around that there's lots and lots of different activities that go on. But the museum service is a really interesting one that you pick up, because actually if you look at Appendix B on the report, where we've got all the great things that are going on, there's a huge amount going on in museums, and that will differ to what is going on, say, in our customer services area, because museums, so for equality and diversity as an example, museums at the moment are really focused on telling stories, looking at our collections and telling those hidden stories about our collections, which actually might point to our diverse communities, attracting them into the museums, different people who might never have come in before. And that might be very different from another part of the council, which is looking very much more at how we, you know, we make sure that our staff know how to report a safeguarding issue up through to Essex County Council. So it is very diverse, but we'll have a go at making it simpler for you in the future.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there questions around the table? Councillor King was first to catch my eye. Anyone else with? Yes, Councillor Fox. So Councillor King first.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Lucy, and those working with you on what is a very comprehensive report. I absolutely get the Chair's point. It's so comprehensive that, of course, there is a challenge that goes with information. But for my part, it's great that it's in the public domain what you do in all the forms that the places that the council works. And for those who care, and we all should, what we've got here is, as I say, a rich picture of work underway. Three questions, if I may. The first is, it's very difficult to make a comparison with where we'd want to be. It's plain there's a great deal of focused energy and effort across the spectrum what the council covers. Could you talk to us for a moment or two about how, to the extent you can, you judge CBC compares with good practice elsewhere? So that's the first point. The second one is really about partnership and its scope. I think we've all been impressed by the fact that the best work, even today when we think about Ukraine, has been that combination of the best of government or governments, the best of organisations, and sheer energy from individuals. So you've talked about an anti-slavery partnership. Could you talk to us about where you think partnering might next go and what our priorities might be? And third and last of my three, we have a reference so topical to Colchester being a sanctuary city. Now, the numbers referred to there since 2020, I think, were 80 refugees. And although we have got bottlenecks at the moment, I think we all expect at some stage the drop will become a trickle, might become a flood. It would be good to know what we're working up in anticipation of being able to fulfill what are actually demanding promises when you look at them as stated, ones with support. So something on how we are, how we're gearing up and where we might be soon would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so if I go to the first one, comparison of where we are and how we would judge ourselves against others, there are some practical ways we can do that. So Sonia, you know, in the report talks about the audit that happens. We have two different types of audit, Section 11.1 and also a new one now on adult social care as well. So they give us a, you know, from a safeguarding perspective, they give us something to actually measure ourselves against others with. I think I think it's a good question and a kind of a challenging one, because I don't think, again, as I said before, there's not a black and white tick box with all of this. This is about us kind of assessing what needs to be done, looking at what we think are really important, and I think, again, where we've worked with the external consultant for our workforce development is another example of where we do want to try and monitor and assess where we are, because it's not always easy to do. But as I said, I think surveys help us. We've done some staff surveys. We've got this external audit going on our workforce, which will cover that area of work. And we've got the piece of work, that the ongoing audit that gives us a year on year around our safeguarding. So there's some key measures that we look at that help us judge where we sit against all of this. In terms of our key partnerships, I would hate to pull out one key, but I think we've got so many key partnerships now that, but I guess One Colchester's a bit of a cop out for me to say, because it's all of them. You know, all our key partners are part of One Colchester. And really within that, the key ones for what we're trying to do with equality and safeguarding and is the police. Absolutely, the work that we do with the police, and I think there's a raft of information in the report that hopefully demonstrates that really close working that we have with the police through Safe Colchester, through One Colchester, and indeed just operationally on a day-to-day basis. And then the voluntary sector, our other key partners, working with Community 360, and especially as an infrastructure voluntary organisation, but actually all our voluntary sector partners, Refugee Action, for example, coming into the third question that you had, and the really close relationship that we now have with them. And health, I mean, I just can't forget health. Health are such a key player now, such an important partner. Not only are they investing now in the preventative sort of health side, which fits really well with the inequalities the health inequalities that people suffer from. So there are, hopefully that kind of summarises some of those key partnerships that we work with and how important they are in this arena. And then finally, on the preparing ourselves, the work again there that we've been doing, I think has prepared us really well. So first of all, with our Afghan refugees and working with Refugee Action, but also the relationships that we have with the Home Office, specifically from that piece of work. We're learning a lot through working with our current refugees. They're up at the Holiday Inn, and again, those key partnerships I just talked about. So it's all about us. It's difficult at the moment to ready ourselves in the sense of knowing exactly what they're going to need. I think we're still waiting for some national guidance to come down regarding, who will come to the country, whether they will have families to go to, whether they will be looking for housing. But actually what we can say is we're very well placed with our partners at the moment in terms of that support. So hopefully that helps with those. I don't know, Sonia's got anything you wanted to add about any of those?
No, I think Lucy.
Are you happy with the answer, Councillor King?
I think, Sonia, you'll be giving the opportunity to add to the remarks that Lucy's made. I'm happy to wait for those remarks, and then I'll return, if I may, Chair, to a couple of small points. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was literally just going to reiterate the majority of the work we do within our team, both community safety and safeguarding, is all around partnerships. So that's, as Lucy said, the One Colchester partnership, the Safe Colchester partnership, where we operationally and strategically work really closely with police, health, fire colleagues, but also a number of other partners that have come on board to focus on some of our hidden harms, so the domestic abuse, some really good contacts within justice and care for modern slavery. So it's again, a bit like the whole safeguarding agenda, it's a constant work in progress, and we're always bringing in new and relevant partners into those kind of forums. So again, it all adds to the work in progress. Thank you.
One point, Chair, if I may, just focusing on the third thing, which I know we all care about, which is the capacity and ability to respond to refugees from Ukraine. The numbers we know elsewhere in Europe have been extraordinary. Perhaps it's today 1 million in Poland. Whatever happens, there's going to be a significant number coming into the UK. It's a reasonable estimate. The government itself has talked about a willingness to take 200,000. So I'd like to go back to the issue of capacity and readiness, if only to put the marker down, which I hope the committee would agree with, that we really need to get our skates on and make sure we're starting to think that if we had 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 300 people or their families, that we have some idea where they might go and how we might house and look after them. I accept we can't have an answer to a question not yet posed, but I think it's a reasonable challenge to the organisation to say that this looks likely to be coming our way, and it would be good to hear that we are all over it. Thank you.
If I might ask a question arising from Councillor King's line of questioning, I'm not a management consultant, but I have difficulties in fathoming how you would have KPIs and some realistic benchmarking of our performance against other authorities, if only because much of the work being done in equality and safeguarding is reacting to events rather than having, say, an annual programme which can be used to compare the same effectively annual programme with other authorities. And there may be scope to do it, but I just wonder whether, I put the question to you, Councillor King, and I put the question to Lucy Bredman, is this an area where KPIs and benchmarking is a sensible way to proceed, or is it so nebulous that we'd spend more time trying to put together a sensible set of KPIs and philosophy for benchmarking than the actual service we're delivering?
I would love to have the challenge of working on that, Chair. I think the answer for my part must lie between can do and can't. There has to be a judgment, in my experience, as yours, I'm sure, of how much gain for the effort. In the particular area that I was wanting us to have a conversation around, it's very difficult to do any kind of benchmarking. I absolutely get it. This is it's an opportunity today to have a fundamental conversation or encourage the one that I hope is happening around the creation of capacity in the borough. And I'm less concerned about that for my part in the measurement of it. We trust our officers, that in the fact that for the public who are watching us, and so far perhaps in this respect not impressed by the government machine, that we are doing what we can to get ready. So I take your point, judgment about KPIs and measurement doesn't always fit, but we are together. It's an opportunity to touch on something fundamental. The measurement a bit later is less an issue for me than the assurance of the importance that we should be placing on it and the work that we have underway.
Lucy, we councillors are having sort of a private discussion, whereas in scrutiny mode we should be asking you questions to ensure that the performance of the areas is absolutely tip-top. But do you have an opinion on whether KPIs are appropriate to this area and whether benchmarking is worth a candle?
I think it's always worth thinking about. So, there are some key areas. So if we say we already have an aspiration that our staff will have training, we can measure the fact that they do have that training. We can measure the fact that, are all staff inducted in and have the awareness. We can make sure that councillors have the training again and that that we measure that. So there are some KPIs in some areas. We can certainly with referrals, again, there's something around, we measure the referrals every year. We look at what we're referring, why we're referring. I just think we have to be careful, that I expect that our external audit that we're doing on the workforce will give us some actions and activities. And again, there with staff surveys, what you'd hope to be seeing is some improvement year on year. If you're asking staff, do they feel included? Do they feel, you know, that there will be certain measures that we could apply to that. So I don't think it's irrelevant. I just think we have to be a little bit careful and make sure we don't engineer KPIs that perhaps, you know, can tell you all sorts of untruths as well as truths.
Thank you. Councillor Fox, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Lucy and Sonia, for such a comprehensive report. And it really is good to see so much of the work that is going on. And I suppose I would particularly pick out the work around inequalities and also the work that's being done with partners to tackle suicide as well, which we know is a serious issue in this part of Essex. I wondered if I might just ask a specific question on 7.19 around the training programme for taxi drivers. I know that this is an area that the licensing committee has taken particular interest in over recent years, and the report says that training will be mandatory from winter 2021. I wondered if there's any more specifics on the date for that and how that's being rolled out to taxi drivers to ensure that that is completed both for new and existing taxi drivers in the borough. Thank you.
Sonia, do you want to cover that one? Because I know you've been involved in that, haven't you?
Yes, I can give you a brief update on that. So when we developed our package for safeguarding training, we were thinking of how we could adapt that package, that level 2 training for our own staff, for other partners, colleagues who may find it useful. So had those conversations with our licensing team, who were at the time looking for a different way of delivering training for our taxi drivers. So the situation we're in at the moment, we have a very nearly finished package for the taxi drivers. It's been tweaked and amended with lots of consultation with the licensing team to be specific for the taxi drivers. Unfortunately, we've had a few challenges with IT on moving. It's very technical, moving into different e-learning platforms and things, and how we can
Is normal service going to be resumed?
I think
Sorry,
we might
Chair,
have lost Sonia there, sorry.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's not the connection of the YouTube or the connection over here, Chair. So we might have to wait for us to return.
Perhaps we can come back to that later on. Then, Councillor Fox, presumably you have further questions.
That was my main question. Thank you, Chair. I'm reassured that the team's working on that, and perhaps if we just got some written detail on some of that work, that would be useful. Thank you.
It was just unfortunate that, as the speaker mentioned, problems with IT, the link collapsed. But there we are. Any other councillors wishing to ask questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you. It's quite a comprehensive report. Do we have any action points on how we're going to be moving forward with this report, or what's to be taken into account in more detail at all?
Sorry, was that action points on the report?
On how we move forward with it and what we're agreeing, because we're looking at what's been done. Are we fully up to speed with everything, or is there quite a bit more work to be done on this side of things?
Well, I think there's always more work to be done. As I said, I think what we've tried to give you is a snapshot of all the things that we're currently doing and all the areas going forward that we'll be focusing on. But, you know, as I said, I think we're never complacent with this, and I don't think you can afford to be complacent. So I guess what we're asking of the committee tonight is to reflect on what you've seen in the report and give a view really as to whether you're comfortable that we're doing the right things, whether you feel there's any gaps in that, or that we should be focusing elsewhere.
Any further points, colleagues?
Well, it was just with the level of training. I mean, we're seeing what's being proposed and what's going forward, but it would be nice to see some actual results of what's actually been achieved in a bit more detail. I mean, it's like we don't have any stats on how many have gone through the training or how many are, you know, it says a few hundred of one, but it doesn't tell you how or who has passed or not, or if we have the competence, you know, of doing the job, you know, with colleagues in the council. You know, that's all I was wondering, because the stats, it's very difficult to take this on board from all the stats, plus I've only just seen the report, so which doesn't help me much.
So Sonia, if you're back with us, can you pick up the training piece?
Yes, sorry, I think I missed the start of that question, but yeah, I mean the training, the new e-learning training, the levels 1, 2 for safeguarding. We've also got prevent, which is counter-terrorism, suicide awareness, prevention, levels 1 and 2. Again, we've had a few teething problems with moving from one platform to another. So our HR team have taken over the monitoring of all the completion rates of all the mandatory safeguarding training. So again, it's a bit of a work in progress, but we can look at maybe how we can explain those statistics a little bit better in the next report. At the moment, we're kind of having a dual process of the HR team monitoring, sending out reminders and things for us, but also we're keeping track of the emails we receive of pass rates, or if anybody hasn't quite passed, needs a little bit of help to get through the training. So we are trying to tie all that up together, and hopefully by the next report, we will hopefully have a better way of delivering those statistics. I don't know if that answers the question.
It was just really the concern with the safeguarding of children and, you know, adult care. You know, if I was just worried that, you know, you're saying they're training, but if it was just how many had been trained, and just see that, you know, we do have the staff, you know, because I know it's been difficult with staff issues with everybody in the whole district. So I do understand that. But if we've got staff in the council that are all fully trained and they have enough members to cover this, you know, these two adults and child sort of safety issues.
Yeah, I mean, we report, we have concerns. If we have concerns about vulnerable adults, children, there is a formal process that we use to report those through to adult social care or children and family services. The statutory requirements for CBC staff, everybody does the level 1, so that gives you the basic awareness, how to spot the kind of basic signs, and obviously who to speak to within the council, how to make referrals if you do have concerns. The suicide awareness, as was mentioned earlier, that's also now statutory at a basic level, just to give staff, members, volunteers, casuals, that basic knowledge of increasing their awareness, knowing what to do if they have a concern, not being worried about it, knowing who they can talk to pass on their concerns. And as I mentioned, we also have the prevent as well. That's a mandatory course, that's actually a home office course that we've adapted. So those are the kind of the level 1 statutory courses for everybody within the organisation that we are working really closely to monitor those completion rates. We have higher levels of training, if you like, increasing knowledge for those frontline roles that go out into the community, go into residents' homes, work in customer services teams. So again, we're monitoring the number of staff, the types of roles that are undertaking that training as well, just to make sure we have the right training for the right staff that are out on the ground. And as I mentioned earlier, our designated safeguarding officers who sit within each of our services within the council all receive a level 3 level of training, which is again that higher level of knowledge, how to report, but also a little bit more awareness on spotting the signs, how to signpost. So we're trying to ensure that throughout the organisation we have different levels of training that meet those needs. And again, sort of making those level 1s mandatory for all staff members, and actually looking at ways of how some of that training can be delivered differently into different teams. So if there are some teams we are aware that might need a more face-to-face interactive way of delivering those training sessions, then that's what we're also looking at with our HR team as well at the moment.
Thank you.
Councillor Tate.
Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for the report. It's very long, very comprehensive. With regard to presentation for future reports, I think what it's missing for me is the and what factor. So there's an awful lot you're doing, that's fantastic. We don't have a feel of how many people are benefiting from it. You know, some real numbers to compare to make sure that, you know, that we don't have a lot of resource, and the resources that we do have are ploughed into the right things. So whether that be by a table of, you know, participants or something like that, it's just something really to show we're doing all these fantastic things, but in addition to that, they're benefiting the community in these ways, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point, and certainly we'll take that away and have, because there are some really good outcomes and we're just maybe not sharing them as well in the report. We're telling you more about the things we're doing rather than what that's achieving. So I take that point on board.
Thank you.
Any more? Well, thank you, colleagues. We've given this area, this very important area, a good questioning. The action required is the committee has reviewed the progress made in complying with the council's legal duties and objectives in regard to both equality, diversity, safeguarding, and endorses the approach set out in paragraph 7, about which we've been asking questions. And I think we'll be able to agree that. I just look around for nods whether we could add to that report that we would like to see an easier read, giving sort of visibility of the work and the achievements, if it's possible to do that within existing resources. So I do feel that there is a most excellent story to tell here, and it's not quite being told in the way the report is presented. So, you know, I just look around the table for nods, whether you think that is a sensible attachment to our progressing of this particular report. So if we can add, if you can capture a phrase along those lines, Matthew, that we would we'd like an easy read with simple description of achievements and so on, to explain or to summarize what is a very complex but comprehensive report. So with that, are we agreed? We've done our task of reviewing and supporting the approach set out in paragraph 7. Thank you, colleagues. And thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Sonia. We now move to the contentious issue of the external audit report for 2020-21, an update on progress. The report is found on page 49 of the order paper. We have Paul Cook, Head of Finance, attending remotely, and Aphrodite Lefave from BDO also attending remotely. and from also advising the committee, we have the Chief Operating Officer who's taken a particular interest in this area and perhaps can guide us in some of our deliberations. So can we start off with Paul Cook just summarising where we are at the moment from the council's viewpoint, then have a response from Aphrodite.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I could just run very quickly through the report and then I'll pass over to Aphrodite. So on the audit of 2021, it's still not completed. So we've not been able to bring the auditor's final report to the committee for approval this evening, but we are putting every effort to work with BDO to try and bring this audit to a conclusion. As I explained in the report, I'm not really aware there are any major financial issues likely to be identified in the audit that would be of concern to the council. But obviously we must wait for the conclusion of the audit before we can be certain about that. If I could just, with your indulgence, Chair, just whiz quickly over a couple of other financial years. For 21-22 accounts, we have already started closing those accounts as well. The timetable for those accounts is very similar to this year's in that we will produce the draft accounts and launch the public inspection by the end of July. And it's planned that the audit opinion would be granted by 30th of November, though I'm sure Aphrodite will want to comment on that when I bring her in. And then just on a couple of other financial years, 2-3, which I know is some way off, though the financial year will start soon, but the final accounts are some way off. We will, according to government consultation, be back on a much tighter timetable where we will need to produce the draft accounts by the 31st of May. And it would be expected that they would be published with audit opinion on 3rd September. But also, of course, we're just about to start work on 2023-24 budget, would you believe? So it would be great if we could round off 2021 audit, because although we love complexity as accountants, having about 5 different financial years on the go at once isn't ideal. But as I said in my remarks, Chair, I don't feel there's anything at the moment that is a finance issue that would, cause concern to the council, albeit the audits are not completed. So let me now pass over to Aphrodite. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and good evening. Regrettably, as Paul has already said, we are not in a position to issue our audit opinion on the financial statements for the 2021 year. If I could just start by saying on behalf of BDO, I do want to apologise for the continuous delays that the council has experienced, because this is not the audit service that we would want you to experience, and it's not what we usually strive to deliver. I appreciate this is very frustrating and a disappointing position to be in, and I would share the same feelings as you if I was in your place. I do, however, want to make it clear that there are numerous reasons as to why we are where we are. Just to set a bit of context, recruitment and retention of good quality experienced auditors has become increasingly difficult. We are experiencing a net loss of staff, and this is a national issue and not just a BDO issue. This is across the board, across the profession. The scope of audit work has been ever increasing with complex investments and property portfolios on top of the already very complicated public sector accounts. Regulatory pressure has also increased significantly with sanctions on audit firms, increasing expectations on the quality, rightly so. However, the audit fees on local government audits have not matched the expected increased audit work that we have to do. In many cases, public sector audits have been compared to the likes of public listed entities where the fees are several times higher. So this has obviously led to, as you would expect, reduced investment in the sector and increased pressures for staff, leading to this becoming quite an unattractive profession for people. In the last few years, there's been lots of updates to the ISAs, the International Standards of Auditing. Just to give you an idea, since 2019, I believe more than half of the ISAs were updated. There's something like 40 ISAs. And that's resulted in a change and an increase in the audit work we have to do. Regulatory findings have set new expectations. So things that 3 years ago were considered to be best practice are now considered inadequate. There's also certain concerns over the lack of investment in public sector finance accountants. So offering those individuals appropriate training and experience following the increasing complexities of the public sector accounts. So these are all issues that are widely recognised, and you will have seen in the news and public publications about these, saying that the system is broken and that drastic action is needed. The Redmond review specifically focused on the recommendations to help achieve help fix the system in the longer term. However, in the short term, I think the short term remains problematic. Added to all of this was obviously the pandemic, meaning that audits had to be done remotely, and in many cases that was okay. However, there were huge inefficiencies. Auditing via email or telephone is much harder than face-to-face. This has had a huge impact on our ability to train our juniors. 70% of the training happens on the job, and the lack of this sort of training has led to performance issues and further delays. There are some specific issues that have impacted the Colchester audit, such as various team members resigning. I think we're on our third audit manager at this stage, one of which, one of the members, not managers, has actually joined the council itself, which I'm sure you've heard of, and that's given us an independence issue to worry about as well. There's obviously been sickness absence, as you would expect, both from the council and audit team, and increased quality expectations on council prepared working papers. So things that the council might have prepared for us in the past would perhaps not be sufficient this year due to the increased quality expectations I mentioned. And then there's the extended audit taking place, taking more time, both from BDO and the council. We have worked and continue to work with the council officers to agree a realistic timescale for completing this audit, and we do hope to be in a position to conclude in the next few weeks. The majority of our work is completed and undergoing a quality review, and we will continue to maintain regular conversation with Paul and the rest of the team and work in partnership with them to deliver this audit. And as Paul has said, we have already started conversations on how to improve the delivery in the future. I appreciate this is very frustrating and disappointing, but I do hope members will appreciate we're working through a very difficult situation, and we are working as hard as we can to deliver all our outstanding audits. I do appreciate the help and support from the council officers and also of my colleagues in BDO during this audit. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for that. Could you clarify just where we are on the audit? I mean, what percentage of it is completed? I know that's difficult because most issues being looked at will go through various stages before an opinion is there. So it's quite difficult, I guess, just to say, 10% or 50% or 90%. But can you outline what work is done and is now in the cupboard. It's ready to go. Where there is work still to be done, because I noticed in the report that there were still questions coming in, for instance, about the payroll for the council and its companies, which came in February, and we wouldn't want to be sort of accused of not responding to the questions as they come in. But is it possible to give an easy to understand description of just where we are, what has been done, what remains to be done, your expectation of how the work that hasn't yet been done is going to be dealt with and over what time scale? Or am I asking the impossible question?
No, it's a fair question, and I can give you my best estimate. So at the current point in time, let me go back actually. When, as you would expect, when we perform our audit, we have a team of people of different grades and abilities who will do the audit testing itself. There's then a more senior member, typically the manager, who will be reviewing their audit work, asking questions. That team will then come back to the council to seek answers. And once the manager is satisfied that the work has been done to an adequate quality and we've got all the assurance we require, that will then be passed on to myself and sometimes even a second partner for review before we issue our opinion. So there's various levels of review, as you have alluded to. At this point in time, all of our testing has been done. However, the work is going through that manager review, as well as elements of it are going through my review. The manager review has been concluded on 65% of our work. So if you assume 35% of the audit work has been done, however, not been reviewed yet. So there is the possibility that there could be some questions coming out of that 35% of audit work. But the 65% is done, and as you said, in the cupboard, and we're fairly happy. Shouldn't require anything further on that. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think that gives us some sort of metric of where we are. The 65% is done. The remainder is work in progress, but has yet to be fully reviewed. And I think that just sets the scale of what has to be done before we get our sign off. Councillor Barber.
Sorry, apologies. Shall I go on to the timescales element of the question?
Yeah. Yes, okay.
Apologies. So that 35%, as I said, has gone through some initial review, and some rework is required, or there's further questions that need to be addressed. And we have a team working through that this week and for the following 2 weeks. And the hope is that we should be able to conclude on those by the end of March.
And that is a very realistic prospect, that's said with a degree of confidence.
It is. However, I don't like to make promises, because I appreciate we've been in this situation before, where we set a deadline and then people go on sick leave, or there's other issues that happen. So assuming nothing goes wrong, then I would hope that by the end of March we should be completed.
Thank you. Okay, over to Councillor Barber.
Thank you very much. I guess my main question was touched upon a bit at the end there, because Councillor King and myself have gone through this very same conversation at Essex County Council, where we sit on the governance committee there, where since probably about September we've been sort of promised that it was only a mere few weeks away, and those weeks have continued to slip until we're in March. And I'm not sure where we're at actually on that, but that's obviously not for this forum as a different authority. But my concern is, in particular, that we were told that the county council was going to be prioritised because of the size of the county council as a client, and therefore whether that's effectively going to knock ours further away than being alluded to at the end of March, because that seems quite close, and we've been told repeatedly at the county council that the audit was only a few weeks away, and this was BDO as well. So I don't have much confidence at this stage of the date, but you have explained the timescale of the date, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see is the bottom line. From my own perspective internally at Colchester Council, as we've asked at Essex County Council, I would expect us to seek some sort of recoupation on our fees, because I don't think it's acceptable that taxpayers' money is being spent on a service that hasn't yet been delivered. So I would expect our relevant cabinet member to be seeking some form of something in relation to our fees, because they will be substantial, no doubt, because of the size of us as an authority. So they would be my main comments internally, and the external ones from the representative from BDO, I guess have been answered through your questions, Chair. But my concerns are, I've heard this before elsewhere, and I don't have any confidence at this stage that those deadlines will be hit, but I hope I am proved wrong on that front. Thank you.
Sorry, was the private conversation going on there?
I finished, my microphone's off, so I'm done.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is it possible to answer that question then, Aphrodite?
Sorry, was that a question in relation to the timescales or the one in relation to the fees? Obviously, I can't comment on the other authority, as that's not relevant to this forum.
It's not directly relevant, because it's another authority. But I think the tenor of the question is the BDO is working for many public authorities. We are not the only client, and therefore it's a fair question to say, well, is the promise made to us contingent on setting back work for other authorities who are then going to be just as annoyed as we are that the dates are not being met. So I think this is just looking for confidence that that you have the capability to do this work without coming under extreme pressure from other unnamed authorities.
So in this case, no, the additional resource we have secured is not from any of the other Essex authorities. It is obviously from other commitments that we have. However, it's not on the it's not ones that would impact this the Essex authorities. I hope that gives you the confidence. But obviously we have got a limited pool of people, which is ever decreasing, and we are doing everything we can to replenish that pool. However, as you can expect, new bodies that come in require more training, and that takes time, which is part of the problem and part of the reason we're in the situation we're in. But the additional people we have helping this week and for the following 2 weeks are not part of the Essex County Council audit team or any of the other Essex authorities that we audit.
That usefully clarifies the matter. And on the matter of fees, much as I sympathise with Councillor Barber that perhaps we should have a reduction in fees for all the aggro that we've had to suffer, I mean, looking at it from the other direction, it is perhaps that the fees which have been set for this work are insufficient to recruit sufficient people of the right quality to get the work done on time, and that is perhaps another difficulty which is beyond the line of questioning which we have here. But presumably the fee will not be affected, and there'll be no rebate because of the difficulties, because that would just put you in a worse position.
Correct. We are not at this moment discussing rebates. In fact, we are discussing the opposite with, well, at the national level. And you will have seen there is an offer from government to provide additional funding to help ease the problem with the fees. I believe something like 45 million was quoted. However, I think the fees is a separate discussion for perhaps another time. But at this point in time, we haven't had any conversations around rebate.
Yes, I think our strategic objective here is to get the audit signed off to a definite timescale, and all the other issues about how much we pay and whether government's got it right and so on are relatively insignificant compared with the need to clear this audit off the desk and have a recognisable and achievable plan for the audit for the year which is just about to complete. Councillor Fox.
Thank you very much, Chair. It is frustrating for members of this committee to have to go through a report like this again. I can't imagine how frustrating it must be for the finance team in the council, or even for BDO in the position that they find themselves in as well. And I note that the report states that the delay won't have an impact on the financial management in future years. And I've always been very impressed, being sat on this committee or being sat on the scrutiny panel or being a member of the cabinet, about the internal financial management within our own organisation. But that, by the by, is doesn't mean that audit isn't important in the governance of this authority and, for that matter, other local authorities. And so I suppose my concern will be that we will be sat here again this time next year in a similar position, or maybe even in a worse position, because of the delays this year, impacting next year in terms of the audit and impacting in future years after that. And I suppose I'm looking for a reassurance from BDO that on their opinion about how the audit will be on time in future years from this point.
Thank you. Obviously, this is not a situation that we like to be in. It's not pleasant for us, as you said, not for the council officers either. And we are doing everything we can to break this cycle. However, we think this will take some time to break. There is drastic action that is actually needed, and there are consultations out there for solutions of how to help break this cycle. In the short term, I don't think there will be. In the short term, I think it will be very difficult to get back to the original timescales that we previously used to work on. The plan for next year is to initially work with the finance team to come up with a realistic and workable plan that we can work towards and achieve. We want to avoid having this 6-month audit, and we want to go back to the slightly shorter audit that we used to do previously. And we have some ideas that we are discussing and we continue to discuss, but obviously we have been focusing on trying to get this the 2021 audit completed before we go into too much detail for next year. I cannot give you any reassurance around meeting next year's deadline. because I believe that that will be extremely difficult.
I think we understand the problem, but it is a serious operational issue for us. Councillor Tate.
I was indicating Councillor Fox wanted to speak.
Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Fox was clearly rolling his eyes in desperation. And so, Councillor Tate.
No, when I was indicating, it was that I wanted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Are there any other comments? Councillor King.
I'd just like to have confirmation of the price agreement for this work. Is it fixed? Is it cost recovery? What is it? Thank you.
So the fees are set by PSAA, public sector audit appointments, and then on top of that, we seek variations on those for additional elements of work that we've had to carry out that would not have been included in those original fees. Those variations are for audit scope changes, or any other elements that, as I said, would have not been included in when those initial fees were agreed. And so the initial fee is obviously a fixed fee, and then any additional variations are ones to be agreed with officers and approved by the council before they are then approved by the public sector audit appointments. At this point in time, we haven't discussed the additional variations. So, the fixed fee, the initial fixed fee, is the fee that was agreed by the public sector audit appointments.
And I think that was reported to us some long time ago when we first started receiving reports on this particular area of activity. Chief Operating Officer.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, just a few words from my perspective on this. Just to say, obviously the audit of the 2021 accounts needs to be completed as soon as possible. I'm well aware how important it is to this committee, how frustrating the ongoing delays have been. And certainly as a senior management team, we consider the completion of the local audit absolutely essential to sustaining public confidence in local democracy, as we talked about at the last meeting. So I don't think there's any doubt in the importance of this. We had a liaison meeting this morning attended by the chairman of this committee, myself, also the chief executive, the chief exec designate, as well as the section 151 officer, technical finance team and colleagues from BDO. It was a positive meeting. And I'm grateful for Aphrodite for explaining BDO's take on their position in regard to 2021 and 21-22. With 2021, I think it's fair to say the council and BDO are committed to completing the audit as quickly as possible, hopefully by the end of March, early April. And the important thing, I think, for this committee tonight is perhaps to think about, well, is there any opportunity for us to get this over the line, if I can put it like that, before the end of the municipal year? Clearly, we don't have any more meetings of this committee in the diary after tonight, but we have consulted with the monitoring officer today, who suggested we have a couple of options that we could consider, assuming that timetable of sort of end of March can be met. Option one would be to organise a specially convened meeting with one agenda item of this committee. That would need to take place before the last week of April. And considering we have got the Easter holidays in the middle there, it is very tight. We would need to have confidence about the end of March deadline, confidence enough to actually set a meeting and be able to stick to it, and for papers to be ready in time, which isn't just BDO completing their deadline by the end of March, it is for the finance team to then review that and produce papers, and then those papers to be published 5 working days ahead of the meeting date. So that's really the parameters of an specially convened Governance and Audit Committee meeting. Option 2 would be, I think, more straightforward, and that would be for the committee to agree tonight to delegate the approval of the final accounts to the chair and group spokes. That would avoid the need for a special meeting, and probably would be my recommendation this evening if the committee felt that was something they'd be happy to do. Separately, we have agreed today that teams from both organisations will convene again following this morning's liaison meeting to agree a detailed plan for both the 2021 and the 21-22 accounts. We know that this year's delays will impact on 21-22, as Aphrodite was saying earlier, but I still want to understand what we can do together to produce a plan that we, as Aphrodite said, is realistic and workable. I don't think it's good enough for us to hope to get to November and then see another delay and another delay. That's really not a fair position for this committee to be put in. So I would like us to take that away, and perhaps we'll need to report to the first meeting in the next municipal year about what that plan looks like. So that was all I wanted to say, Chairman.
Thank you. The first point to reflect on is that there is a date at the end of March, which is not absolutely certain. We heard the explanation, but there is some confidence that it is possible the BDO work will be completed by that date. If that is so, we would look pretty silly, given all we've said and done about delays, if we then had to wait 3 months for the next meeting of the Governance Audit Committee or whatever entity carries out that function in the next civic year. And it always takes some time to get things going in the new civic year. So I think it's a sensible contingency that, as a committee, I think we should follow what is being suggested, and authorise the chairman, in conjunction with the group spokespersons, to accept the work that has been done, if there is an opportunity to do so. And it may well be that it just has to go over into the next civic year, but we should not waste time if there is an opportunity to formally approve the accounts. So I think in closing this item, I will put it to you that we so resolve, and if the monitoring officer is happy with that activity taking place potentially so near to the elections, and as a council we try to avoid controversial issues happening within with a stone's throw time-wise of the elections. So I mean, monitoring office, is that an acceptable way of proceeding?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think it is. We do need to bring this to a conclusion. We need to do it for a variety of reasons. One of them, from my point of view, is good governance of the authority. We need to get the accounts signed off. So yes, Chair, I would recommend that you do that. And I would also recommend that you consider perhaps bringing a report back to the first meeting in the new municipal year, just to confirm what action has been taken, so the whole committee has the opportunity to see what action has been taken. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, we certainly welcome your guidance to ensure that we get the procedures absolutely right in accordance with the Constitution. So that seems to settle our consideration of this matter. We express our disappointment with the ongoing delays. We see a light in the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel, that there's a possibility that the accounts could be ready by the end of March. Not absolute guarantee, but a possibility with a degree of confidence that that could be so. And we have a method of expediting the approval of those accounts if they are available. And of course, if the presentation of the accounts by BDO is not the end of the work, there has to be further consideration by the 151 officer, Paul Cook, if you're happy with what is being suggested. And of course, the giving of notice that we are that we would be taking the abbreviated measure to approve the accounts. Can I just put it back to the 151 officer, Paul Cook? I mean, are you happy with what is being suggested?
Yes, I think because the committee chair has already seen the draft accounts at a proper meeting, and as Andrew Weaver says, it's very important to round this off. I would be happy with that delegation. I think that is the best way to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to have two sets of accounts open and ready for audit, and it could get a bit nasty. Thank you.
I'm sure our officers would cope because they're marvellous people, but we should try and make life as simple as possible for them and adhere to the recovered guidelines. So do I have your approval? We've reviewed the position. We have a contingency arrangement to deal with the approval of the accounts if they are available by the end of March, as has been suggested is a possibility. Is that, do you agree with that as our plan of action? Thank you, colleagues. Can I thank you for attending virtually twice in a day, Aphrodite. It's most helpful. I know you probably think of us a load of whingers who are always complaining, but this is a strategic issue, and I think we are entitled to express stern views about the delays in the audit. But thank you for your help, thank you for your guidance, thank you for expressing in so frank terms just what are the problems, so that we are able to understand, and we just hope that come the end of March we will have a set of accounts which we can move forward, an audit accounts which we move forward with. So thank you for helping us.
Thank you.
Sorry, now move forward to item 9 on page 53, the monitoring report for April to December 2021. We seem to be having a lot of rather difficult bad news issues this evening. I'm not sure whether the financial monitoring report is bad news or good news, but it's certainly difficult news because since December, a lot has happened, and one likes to dwell back to the years of stability where you could consider and compare one year's accounts with the next, and look at the profiled accounts and know what they really mean. And I suspect we are now approaching a period of turbulence where, as with the audit, the monitoring reports become that more difficult to interpret and extrapolate into a sensible approach for the end of year report. Paul Cook is presenting the report to us in his capacity as 151 officer.
Thank you very much, Chair. In summary, we expect to use less reserves now in 21-22 than originally budgeted. We expected we might need to use about 2.4 million of reserves, and we're probably about 1.6 million better than that, which, as you were explaining, Chair, I'm certain with the way things are moving at the moment, we will need those additional reserves. So the main causes of the variation on the corporate side, because of delays in the capital programme and slightly improved investment rates, we're doing about 400,000 better on the interest budget. and we expected to get about 500,000 of government support for lost sales fees and charges. We've actually been able to claim 920,000, so that's a £420,000 gain. And then on the service side, I think the most impressive element has been a lot of hard work, particularly in sport and leisure, to improve income beyond the budget expectations. So we are doing better than forecast, but we will need the reserves moving ahead with inflation forecasts, the impact on interest rates, etc. So that really, in a nutshell, Chair, is Q3, and of course we will be coming back in the not too distant future with the full year outturn. Thank you.
Yes, it certainly is good news that that the council's income is recovering faster than expected in the profile, and I think we welcome the sterling effort put in by sports and leisure to increase their income by £500,000 ahead of what was expected. Not quite sure what was done on parking fees, but perhaps Colchester continues to be a very attractive place for people to come and put their money in the slot machine or the MPIP machine to swell our coffers. And I think we understand the issues that this means that we will be taking less out of reserves because of this this income. But nevertheless, within the report, we do have section 4.11, which explains where perhaps things are not going quite so well as they are on leisure and parking. And then, of course, there is the prediction for the year end, which must be modified by rampant inflation in our service costs. So good parts and bad parts to this report. Colleagues, questions to our finance officers. Councillor Barber.
Thank you. Hopefully this is not too much of a question that should be asked at scrutiny as a mere humble substitute on the committee this evening. But I wanted to just query a couple of points, if there was any elaboration on what may have caused the shortfall in the museum income, and whether that was anything to do with the restrictions, Omicron, and the impact that had. And secondly, the noteworthy point of £500,000 net overspend on agency/employee costs. Again, is that related to the pressures caused by self-isolation, illness, or is it something else that we need to be aware of going forward? Because obviously that's quite a sizable pressure that's emerged from the budget. Otherwise, it's good news, and I don't want to be too much doom and gloom, but I do tend to, unfortunately, draw on some of the negatives and see if we can maybe improve on those. Thank you.
I think, Chair, would it be possible perhaps to reply in those along with the minutes as more detailed points, but certainly on museums, the various
it's fine with me, yeah.
Sort of, rules on opening have had an impact. And agency, we would tend to mainly fund that cost, Councillor Barber, from the employee budgets, but we can get a more detailed note if that would be okay, Chair. Thank you.
Yep, fine with me, thanks.
Any further questions? Can I signify my continuing worry, and I think I've asked the question before, so I probably get the same answer, and that is on the neighbourhood services cost pressures, where we're up against the vacancy factor target, where we are predicting or trying to predict what posts will be vacant and getting it wrong, apparently. We're not quite as right, but I'll put it another way, more positive. We're not getting it quite as right as perhaps we should be. And I wonder whether anything can be done or whether guidance can be given on improving the vacancy factor targets for individual departments. I know it's a bit on the random side when vacancies occur, but in a large organisation, there should be some some sort of grossing of the effect of vacancies on the cost of running a department.
Thank you, Chair. At the year end, we look at the overall budget assumption on the vacancy factor, and obviously there are ups and downs across services. But could I suggest, as we will shortly be coming forward with the strategy for the 23-24 budget, perhaps that is a factor we could cover more fully in the budget strategy report that will be coming in a few months' time? Because I think we have operated in a similar way for a number of financial years, as you say, Chair, in assessing the vacancy factor. So I don't think it would do any harm at all to perhaps look at that more fundamentally. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm quite happy not to look at that now, but just to note that it's a worrying area that we're not getting quite as right as many other areas of profiling in the budget preparations. Colleagues, further questions, or are we happy with the monitoring statement as presented to us? Yes, it looks as though we're there. So the action required, committee is asked to note the financial performance of the General Fund Service and the Housing Revenue account, on which we've had no questions, for the first 9 months, and note the forecast budget and underspend and the consequences, etc. Is it your wish that we agree that recommendation? Thank you. We now move on to item 10, which is the capital expenditure equivalent for the year to Q3 on page 71. And again, Paul Cook, you're presenting this to us.
Thank you, Chair. As summarised in the table under section 5.1, up to Q3, we spent just under 24 million. And we expect by the year end to spend just under 63 million. Obviously, there have been project delays because of COVID and resource shortages. And in fact, we have just a few weeks ago approved at Budget Council a complete revision of the programme. So we are moving forward as well as we can. In the appendices, we have the RAG ratings for schemes across the 3 categories of delivery, timing and cost. And there's some detailed notes about the ones that are amber rated. So I think also the Chief Operating Officer may have some comments about individual schemes, but welcome any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Chief Operating Officer, do you have any words of wisdom to guide us in our scrutiny of this issue?
I'm not sure I need to say anything by way of presentation, Chairman, but I'm happy to help respond to any questions the committee might have. Thanks.
Councillor King.
2 questions which the Chief Operating Officer and Paul Cook have had to endure before. We have a real challenge in delivering capital programmes in any circumstances, made worse by the last couple of years, pandemic and all of that. The reset to which we've had a reference of the capital programme is intended to help us. Could I just ask for a view today about whether we think that we're going to get closer than either, take the last 2 years, 51% or 38%, of forecast, because I'm troubled by this, because if we're so far off what we intend spending, not only does that have implications for delivery, but it also suggests a lack of control of our forecasting. And I'd just like us to sort of talk about that. And the related question, which Dan has walked me through before, has been to ask where we are on institutional changes that we talked about, he and I and others, a year ago, which were to strengthen the monitoring and oversight of capital programmes. They're so important to us all. We want to give absolutely credit where it's due, and lots is, Collectively, we own this programme as a council. It is ambitious. It's unusually ambitious, and praise to us collectively and our officers. But I continue to worry about the shortfall on spend and forecast and what that might mean, and whether or not we've got more work to do inside the organisation to ensure that we improve that. Accepting the circumstances are challenging. Thank you.
I'll step in, I think, Paul. So first of all, I mean, I think the report, as always, we've got a much better, I think, reporting format here so that the committee can see, as Paul was saying, across 3 different categories, the RAG status of any individual project, quite a lot of green projects, and a number of ambers, and there are comments in the report. I think we have been working hard, as Councillor King will be aware, to improve the systems we've got within the organisation, both through the senior management team, through a programme delivery board, which I chair, and also a programme delivery group, which is an officer level group with our managers coming together to review projects by exception where we need to have some input because either there are challenges in delivery, timing or budget. So those are escalated up to the programme delivery board, and if necessary, 2 members through a capital programme steering group that we've got. So we have the systems in place. It has been a challenging year for a number of reasons, and the comments explain where there have been delays or difficulties. I don't think there's anything fundamentally that we're getting wrong. I think there are still some really impressive schemes coming through and being delivered and on track for delivery. So I don't have any particular concerns. I think there's always things that we would like to go better. Capital programs are, by their very definition, throw up unexpected issues and challenges, and things like permissions from other agencies, unexpected discoveries or archaeology in Colchester can throw things off track. But I think we have got, in this report, quite a good articulation of how the projects are performing. Yes, I would like to see spend ahead of the percentage that it is in this report, and I think we will continue to work together to try and make sure we get the forecasting as accurate as we can. Councillor King, that's probably all I'll say on it, but Paul might want to add something.
Thank you, Dan. I mean, I think it is accepted technically it is more difficult to forecast capital projects, especially as they run over a number of financial years. We have had the difficulties of COVID, but I still think we don't appear to be spending at a high proportion of the planned programme. Certainly, I think the management team, Dan, is looking, isn't it, at sort of project management and business case approval in the wider sense. And again, that's a thing, and keep moving forward with. And there are success stories such as, the town deal within a very tight timetable. Those projects have been brought forward through business cases to secure the government's approval. And then, of course, we're getting delivery stage. So I think in some senses, because we have such an ambitious and successful capital programme, it does create pressures to deliver the projects and monitor them successfully. But I think if we can keep improving, as Councillor King is suggesting, on the monitoring and the control of this area, I'm sure we can continue to get closer to the planned programme. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, we have before us the report, and as has been mentioned, it's now laid out in a manner which is much clearer and much more readily understandable than it has been in the past. And this perhaps reflects the additional emphasis being put into the management of the capital programme, so that in scrutinising it, we can see stands out much more clearly where there is a project which is underperforming, Occasionally, I've been reprimanded for describing capital funds as funny money because it can be sort of stretched and moved from year to year without causing too much problems in a way that our general budget cannot be. But nevertheless, it is a good discipline to try and adhere to the capital programme. And from what we hear as a committee, I think there is substantial work going into the management of the capital programme, the delivery of the capital programme in the most professional way possible, against, again, very challenging circumstances, fast-moving circumstances, where we know that the whole of the construction industry is failing to meet targets, is experiencing significant inflation, and we have to deal with exactly the same challenge. So it's a job and a half to try and make common sense and move forward these programs. And I think we congratulate the Chief Operating Officer and his team on keeping us on track, given the national circumstances which prevail. The projects are all there. We've had our opportunity to ask questions, and I think we, from the way questioning has gone, we are, as a committee, happy with the way this area is being managed. The action required: the committee is asked to consider the financial performance of no, wrong one. Committee is asked to look at the capital programme expenditure budget at the end of Q3. Capital programme encompasses the general fund services, the housing revenue account investment programme, and the revolving investment fund, about which we hear little. It is a significant capital programme, and the action required to approve progress of the capital programme, to note the RAG ratings of each capital programme scheme provided by the project managers, and to review the risk analysis on areas where there is a risk of material shortage, inflation, or increases in costs, which is going to be a job and a half. So can we agree that we have carried out the actions required of us in 2.1 to 2.3? Thank you. We now move on to item 11 on page 81. Looking at the internal audit plan for the years 2022 to 23, and Hayley McGrath, Corporate Governance Manager, will be guiding us through this report. The floor is yours. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to set out for you the proposed audit plan for the next financial year. It forms part of a 5-year plan, and we do it on a rolling basis. So a couple of years ago, the 5-year plan was agreed, but it's appropriate to bring back the 1-year plan each year just to make sure it's still appropriate, because our services change, the way that we provide things changes, and some of our issues change. So we give you an opportunity to review the audits that are coming up on the next financial year. We've set them out, I say we, our internal auditors, Tia, who are with us tonight. So we have Fiona and Olu, if you want to ask them any questions about the particular audits. They've set out a report for you, showing the audits that are going to be undertaken. Now, some of those we do annually to provide assurance for our statement of accounts processes, and others we do on a rolling basis. We also include audits for Colchester Borough Homes and Colchester Commercial Holdings Limited, and we provide those on a joint basis. So with Colchester Borough Homes next year, we'll be looking at the homelessness audit, and with Colchester Commercial Holdings, we'll be looking at helpline and CCTV and the events audit. They also have a few days to be able to choose to review their own areas as part of that assurance process for Colchester Borough Council. So the report also sets out some of the key themes, key emerging themes in the world of internal audit generally in local authorities. And a lot of these have been included already into our audit programme. And we've also set out the proposed audits for the final 2 years of the 5-year plan, so you can see how that rolling programme looks. In terms of some of those key emerging themes, we also include them in our risk register process, because audit is a review looking back at the council's performance over the last year of how we've provided those services. And our risk management process looks at some of those emerging themes and how we'll manage those risks. So the internal audit programme is part of our risk management assurance process, and gives that review, making sure that some of those assumptions that we made about our risks were appropriate and how we've managed them. So I won't go into detail about all the individual audits. As I say, Fiona and Olu are online if you want to ask them any questions, but it's whether you have any concerns or questions about the audit programme presented to you.
Thank you. It's good to recall that the audit programme is part of our risk-based assessment, and clearly it's information gathering as well as assurance giving in regard to our key processes. I certainly welcome the way the report is now set out. We seem to have had very significant improvements in the way some of these reports in the governance area are now being presented, because it does enable a better understanding of the overall approach to internal audit, what is being done, when it's being done, and also the interlinking of audits under a general theme. I personally find it much easier to follow the logic of how our audit resources are being applied in the forthcoming year in the context of the 5-year plan, although only 3 years are rolled forward in the report by TIA. So colleagues, are there any immediate questions on the audit programme, the audit work? Or do we accept that this report is so clear that very little additional questioning is required before we announce it acceptable?
Chair, it's a first-class piece of work on the face of it. We should say that out loud. You've said it well for us, but rather than have just silence, this is good work, well expressed, and we have an opportunity later in the cycle to look at the rolling results. But I think as a process explained and well set out, and thanks to Tia as well, I think this is, I just echo, so you don't feel alone there, Chair. This looks to me to be good work.
Councillor Barber.
Like a bus now, they're coming, aren't they? I'll just express my gratitude as well. As a sub, it's not always easy following the continuous work of a committee, but it was very easy to understand where we're at on this. And also thanks to our guests who have diligently sat there waiting for their opportunity to speak to the depth of the evening. And thankfully the work is so splendid that there's no need for further cross-examination on it. So thank you, Chair.
Well, if there are no other comments, if the information is explained to us so clearly, one's tempted to open the book and start asking questions from random pages, but I just don't think it's necessary on this occasion. We have a very clear understanding of what is going to be done this year, what is going to be done in future years, why it's being done, the prioritisation. I think it's a great report, superb, all round. I just want to approve it. So recommended decision is that the committee is asked to consider and agree the internal audit plan for 2022-3 as shown in the report. I think it's great work. So it's agreed. Thank you. We now move on to one of those mysterious reports, review of digital meetings, which doesn't have any words written behind it, which always causes a sort of a degree of worry. But as it's from the monitoring officer, those worries will soon be dispelled. Monitoring officer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just going to give you an update on where we are in relation to digital meetings. You will be aware of the benefits of remote/hybrid committee meetings, so I'm not going to dwell on them, but I'll just focus on the national position and where we are in relation to a technical solution for our meetings going forward. So if you recall, back on the 25th of March 2021, the government launched its call for evidence regarding local authority remote meetings, and that consultation closed on the 25th of June 2021. The current position stated on the Department of Levelling Up Homes and Communities website is, we are analysing the feedback. And there is no current indication when the government's response will be published. However, all the signs are that the government will eventually enable digital/hybrid meetings to happen, but possibly not for all meetings, but the Secretary of State has publicly expressed his support for them in principle. So in the interim, we are bound by the requirements of the Local Government Act 1972 and have to continue with in-person meetings until parliamentary time can be found to introduce the required primary legislation. And obviously we'll be keeping members updated on developments as and when they occur. So turning to meetings now and what we are doing. We all know that the way forward is live streaming for meetings, and the committee will recall that we had been considering this over a number of years. However, the technological solutions at that time were very expensive and Zoom had not yet been developed or launched. The pandemic has undoubtedly brought forward more solutions and expectations regarding digital accessibility and by implication transparency and accountability in our meetings. Currently, we are either audio live streaming some meetings or live video streaming others, depending on whether remote/hybrid attendance was appropriate and or the nature of the business to be transacted. You'll be pleased to know that officers have been looking at a range of potential solutions for the town hall. However, what was very apparent is there is not one solution which will be suitable for all our 3 meeting rooms, i.e. the grand jury room / West Committee room, the council chamber, and here in the Moot Hall. Accordingly, it was agreed that we would aim to equip the grand jury room / West Committee room first, as this was the easiest room to source a technical solution for. I'm pleased to confirm that I have now placed an order with Marks Tay Radio for a bespoke solution for the grand jury room / West Committee room, which will comprise control console, 2 large 65-inch display screens, a wide angle camera, and an HD zoomable camera. This solution is portable and the cameras are mounted on the display screens, and they will provide full coverage of the meeting room, and the cameras will be able to focus on individual speakers when they are speaking. This system will enable remote/hybrid meetings and participation for councillors, officers, and the public. We have tested the equipment and we have seen it in operation, and I can confirm to you it is very impressive, and we will start using it from the commencement of the new municipal year. We are also currently looking for a bespoke solution for the council chamber as the next room that we are trying to equip. But due to the complexity of the room layout, and with it being a listed building, it's set within a listed building, it's proving a bit more challenging, but we are on the case, and I confirm that we'll be keeping members informed regarding progress and hope to be able to report back soon. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
Well, that is indeed good news that that a solution has been found for for 2 of our rooms at a reasonable cost and deliverable within a short time scale. And I think we do sympathise with the problems of providing an economic, easy to work solution which can be used by democratic services with their majoring democratic and also having to learn a bit of IT and control room skills to ensure that that the meetings go ahead in a cost-effective way. Congratulate you on achieving that milestone. If not the whole solution, at least we can see we're moving forward. I sometimes wonder, though, when I attend and speak at Cabinet in the old system, all members of the public would see was the back of my head as I pointed out the errors of Cabinet's ways in those particular rooms. Nowadays, of course, the expectation has suddenly gone up that the public not only demand the right not to see the back of my head, they expect to see the front of it, hence the need for stage makeup before I come and chair a meeting. We are being quite ambitious, and I think that ambitious target has been set by the idea of Zoom, where you actually see the speaking person close up, look into his eyes on the screen and see whether he's telling the truth or misleading the committee. I think we do now have a high expectation of the IT systems to deliver the meetings to the public, and it becomes quite difficult to live up to that expectation in an old building. But I think it is good news that you've delivered this evening, and welcome it. Colleagues' views on the matter? Councillor King? Oops, sorry.
You're in command, Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge the oral report, thank you, and just join you, Chair, like others, in just saying thank you for the work that lies behind the remarks that you've made. All itself would have taken you some time, so I'm sure we all feel the same. So on behalf of colleagues and members not here, a sincere thank you for keeping on a challenging task and getting us closer to the point we want to be at. Thank you.
Chairman, if I could just come back and just confirm, it is a whole democratic services team who are working on this. It's not just myself. So I'd like to acknowledge it's the whole team. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Yes, I mean, it is new skills, isn't it, that we're having to take on people who start their careers thinking that they're going to be serving the council in one way and suddenly find that they're having to leapfrog the BBC and ITV in terms of what's expected of them. But I'm sure, as ever, our officers will rise to the occasion and deliver a perfect service. Any further comments on this? It seems very straightforward. It's a great leap forward. And Councillor Fox is going to.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to put on record that I think ever since I became a councillor, joined the authority, that people have been talking about broadcasting meetings properly, so that the public do have an insight into what we're doing here. I think it is important that there's that level of transparency, and I think that actually video does give that over and above the audio options that have been available in the past. And with COVID, we've all come to expect being able to see meetings in the warmth of our own homes. And I think that it's important that I do think it's important that we do invest in facilities in the town hall as well. And I think this will be money well spent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just to follow on that, I think that it's really important to allow a bit of diversification in the type of people who can become councillors as well, because it means you can attend a lot more meetings by being able to dial in. setting aside the voting aspect of it, as we're currently tied by legislation, I think just having the infrastructure in place so that if I want to go along to speak for 3 minutes in a committee, I don't have to commit a whole evening to do so. And I'm really grateful. I think members in general should be really grateful for all of your work in helping facilitate that and ultimately making our lives and also hopefully your lives easier, so you can present reports more easily on Zoom, so you can sit and maybe do something else well until waiting to your part. So yeah, I think it's really excellent, really important part of democratizing as well meetings and making sure, because there's been votes that are now people like to hide behind the fact they may have voted one way 5 years ago, and there's not really a record of seeing how people voted by show of hands, but now you can see that and it's on record forever. So I think that's really important. And if I may, Chair, may I be excused now prior to the last meeting for the work schedule, because I have another meeting to go to, if that's okay. FIN there, as there's no voting and I'm not a permanent member for the work programme, if that's okay.
I have no powers to detain you here, Councillor Barber, so yes, you're most welcome to. And I think my final comment, committee, on this issue is, although it's a disappointment to hear the monitoring officer explain that there's been no change to the 1972 Local Government Act position, and that we cannot sort of vote remotely. If we look at this particular committee, I mean, it is very rare that we have a significant difference of opinion, which requires a formal vote rather than just all nodding in agreement when we finish reviewing, scrutinising, or considering an item. I know at full council meeting we do go into the theatricals at times, but that really seems to be the exception to the rule. And most of the time, we, despite our political differences, we are operating in a sense of consensus, and so I think we can use the digital system extremely well. It will help us do our work. It won't help us at full council meetings where we all go ape, but for the majority of the work of the council, the real work, it will be a significant improvement to help us along and help the public understand what we are doing. So we note and support the report of the monitoring officer. That brings us to the last item on the agenda, and also the last item on the committee's work programme for this civic year, the work programme for 2021-22. We have a possible additional, I call it a meeting. It may just be the group spokes and chairman for one possible item on the audit. But other than that, I think our work is completed for the academic year. Oh, sorry, actually civic year. So can I thank you for your sort of your good-natured approach to the work which we've had with the Governance or Audit Committee. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but clearly we have aficionados around the table who are prepared to look at the processes, the way we do our work, the way we govern the council, and ensure it is the best possible that we can do in the circumstances prevailing. So can I thank you from the chair for your help and assistance during this civic year, and wish you a safe journey home. Thank you.